Hello and welcome to MVP, the Master's Voice podcast on Mediabrief.com. I'm your host and friend Pavan Chawla, and in this episode, I have an amazing guest. I'm sure everybody is going to benefit enormously from the insights of his experience. I am referring to Nikhil Dey, communicator and coach. His designation is Executive Director, Adfactors PR, and founder Soul to Soul Coaching. Nikhil, welcome to the episode.
Hi, Pavan. Absolutely a pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you, Nikhil. Thanks. And thanks for doing this on a Saturday morning. Because, I know that the best few hours of your week are over the weekend, and we'll come to that and I'll tell my listeners about those too. But, you are making a bit of a sacrifice. But like I say, it's the price of fame.
Pavan, I wouldn't say that, as a PR person, give us a mic or a stage and you can't shut us up. So I love the chance to share and thank you for the privilege of being on your podcast.
Which is why you're here, and I am honored to have you here, Nikhil. And before we get on to the business end of our conversation, which I'm really looking forward to, Nikhil, let me quickly tell my listeners about Nikhil Dey, communicator and coach, executive director at Adfactors PR and founder Soul to Soul Coaching. With more than 20 years of experience in both the agency and corporate sides of communications, Nikhil Dey is focused on finding ways to value add to client campaigns, drive creativity in public relations, and build a culture of continuous learning in the industry. Nikhil is also a big believer in the power of coaching to catalyze positive change. Hence, he's gone and founded Soul to Soul Coaching. Having benefited from the support of professional coaches for many years, it was a natural next step for Nikhil to get certified as a coach himself. He likes to refer to himself as a communicator by profession and as a coach by passion. And he brings enormous passion into everything he does. To share his wealth of insights, Nikhil conducts a number of communication courses and guest lectures at various esteemed institutions from time to time. These include the ISB Hyderabad, Indian Institute of Mass Communication, XIC, SCORE, Symbiosis Pune, Delhi School of Communication, International Management Institute, Lady Sri Ram College, Institute for Technology and Management, KC College of Management, and APJ Institute of Management, amongst others. Nikhil has been named by PR Week amongst the most influential PR professionals as part of the Global Power Book 2016. More recently, Nikhil has been included in the Reputation Today Power 50 and 100 Most Important Professionals list for 2019 and 2020. Nikhil has been associated with the Public Relations Consultants Association of India, which is PRCAI, in various capacities since 2019. A postgraduate in economics from Loyola College, Chennai, Nikhil is also an MBA from International Management Institute, Delhi. Nikhil is a certified life and leadership coach from the Coach for Life Institute, which is recognized by the International Coach Federation ICF. Nikhil is a volunteer coach serving Coaches for You, a support initiative of the ICF coach community in India. Off work, Nikhil looks forward to the best few hours of his week. These are his words. When he plays tennis over the weekend and goes for walks in the various city parks and forests with his family and his four-legged friend Cookie. So that's my guest, Nikhil Dey, Executive Director at Adfactors PR and founder Soul to Soul Coaching. Nikhil, once again, welcome to MVP, the Master's Voice podcast.
Absolutely great to be here, Pavan.
Lovely. Thank you, Nikhil. Let me tell my listeners that as an overall area, Nikhil, I'm going to get him to speak about building teams in times of trouble, unlocking ideas and creating impact. That is something that he really likes to talk about and incorporate in everything that he does. And Nikhil sees this as an umbrella under which I am particularly keen to explore some of the work that Nikhil does so well. And I can tell you that our discussion will likely be hijacked by his vision and beliefs that have helped him create, along with Madan Behel and Rajesh Chaturvedi, a significant new practice for his agency, India's biggest, most awarded and respected Adfactors PR. And that practice is the Social Impact and ESG practice. But before you tell me about the practice, Nikhil, tell me why you launched it. I know it sounds like a naive question, but I want to hear it from you.
Absolutely, Pavan. So I think the opportunity for reinvention presented itself once again when the pandemic hit us. So let me take you back a few steps. If you look at the origins of Adfactors, when it was launched 25 years ago, it was and continues to be a powerhouse in the financial services sector, right? BFSI and IPO was where Adfactors was born,
right,
and continues to dominate till today. But in 2008, when the financial markets went through a severe downturn, Adfactors reinvented itself and came out from that 2008 downturn stronger, bigger, powerful, and nimble. And if you look at the new services that were added at that point of time, a host of new practice areas, right?
Yeah.
So we today are very, very strong when we come to the crisis and issues place. We've built a digital team that's on par with, if not better than many. And we've introduced a mobility practice. We've introduced a healthcare and pharma practice. We've got a frontier tech practice. So today we are a completely new, reinvented Adfactors.
Right.
And that's the beauty of, I think, Madan and Rajesh, their desire to keep pushing the boundaries of what public relations can and should do has given birth to now the social impact and ESG practice.
Lovely.
So it is at the intersection of BFSI again, because, there's a phrase, follow the money, honey. The money is flowing into ESG investing. Right. The term ESG was coined in 2005 as part of a report, Who Cares Wins. And that report was a catalyst to get the financial markets looking at the power of ESG-centric investing.
Lovely.
And I would like to believe that's because in various ways, the world is growing a conscience and doing the right thing, and the power of good is influencing decisions today. And hence, we are well placed to serve emerging needs and ahead of the curve in India.
Lovely. Well put, really, Nikhil. So now tell me, you are indeed, the opportunity is massive, and as you said, you are well placed to serve the world in this space. So what are your USPs as a practice which will empower you to really go out there and stand up and deliver?
So Pavan, the social impact and ESG practice at Adfactors mission is really simple. We're trying to bridge the say-do gap. Many a time, public relations companies are brought into the equation at a point when there is a need to say something, to deliver a message, to take a story out, right? So there's a lot of saying that we are asked to help clients with, right? The storytelling aspect of it.
Right.
But if you look at the definition of public relations, at least the one that I'm most partial to, it says PR is doing good and then getting credit for it.
Right.
Okay?
Yep.
And the reason why I believe this is such a wonderful definition for a PR professional to aspire to live up to is there is a huge element of doing.
Absolutely.
And an equally important element of saying.
Correct.
So the doing of good, even outside of the ESG or social impact context, is about getting a company to act and behave in ways that get it its due recognition.
Right.
And therefore, this becomes what we are trying to build.
Absolutely. Bridging the say-do gap is what actually brings in that most important, the vital, crucial, critical element of credibility and therefore social respect. So tell me about the team that you assembled, Nikhil, and how did and why did you handpick the people that you have?
Absolutely. So at the outset, we realized that the social impact space and the ESG space seem to have two very different, distinct talent pools. The social impact space tends to draw from the world which is otherwise or was known as the CSR space, right? People who were very, very committed to devoting their life to improving the lives of others in some capacity, depending on whatever stream of CSR they were interested in.
Right.
So people who came from that world and were great communicators and had a passion for communication became the kind of talent that was what we looked for in the social impact space. In the ESG space, which is starting to get a lot more technical right now, because you do need, there are ESG rating agencies, There are a host of those kind of special technical capabilities, and therefore we went in search of that talent as well. And we have brought both these worlds along with comms people together. So it's like this beautiful troika of talent that's assembled.
Okay. You want to tell me a little more about the specific kind of talent that you look for in the ESG space?
So, Pavan, I think to answer that question, I need to take a step back to again help you understand how we saw the opportunity. There are a lot of players in this space, but they all seem to be operating at either one or other end of the spectrum, right? So, for example, there are a lot of the NGO members who are actually delivering great work in the field, on the ground. There are many of the big 4-5 consulting firms that are thinking through large format, compliant and sort of how to spend that money in an appropriate way. But there was nobody who was looking at it holistically. And again, if you look at where a public relation firm can play credibly, we look at public relations as we being Adfactors as being the custodians of image, right? And that is something that all of us have to take care of multiple stakeholder needs. So when we started thinking of what is the USP that we could credibly play in, there was a big part of advisory in terms of how to get the C-suite on board with this idea. Because the team, let's say the CSR team or the ESG team, is super smart and versatile in all these companies. They know what they're doing. But they also have a big task of carrying the organization with them. And our ability to bring that service offering in required people who understood all parts of the ecosystem and could be catalysts for change, often within an organization, as the first step towards then taking it to a wider audience. So on the ESG talent specifically, we went in search of folks from ESG rating agencies, right? So this is an emerging service. There are many companies that want to get a third-party independent ESG rating saying that we have been audited. Now, we said that we didn't want to try and replicate a service that was already there, but we needed talent from that talent pool. And what we are looking at offering is what we call a ESG development audit. So when you are at the pre-development stage, when you're trying to understand the ecosystem, and that's what PR folks do, right?
Absolutely.
You are able to bring the outside in so that a company can make an informed decision. So we don't do ESG ratings, but we do ESG developmental audits. And that's the talent that we brought in.
Wonderful. With professionals who've been in the space, done that, and have the insights to understand and evaluate things holistically in the society that they are a part of. Lovely, lovely. That's really a strategic insight. And I think a lot of PR agencies will get a wonderful tip on how to really start, what kind of people to start looking for in that space. Right, Nikhil. My next question is, when did the practice come into being, as in became operational? And, there are two parts to it, the saying and the doing, and you bridging the gap between the two. But you need to have both. How do you arm your teams on both those aspects really strongly, So when did you start? And your two basic pillars, your USPs are bridging the gap between the saying and the doing, but doing both really well. So how do you do it?
So, Pavan, we've been in existence for a little over a year now, and there's been a good learning curve on both the doing and saying part. But on the saying part, what I would love to share with you is what we quickly realized is that there is a huge appetite for digital content as well as very, very technical cerebral content, because there are two audiences that we are often having to deal with.
Right.
The people who are very well informed on the topic and who want to know the technicalities of it, and then the wider audience who is just trying to understand what's going on. But to serve these two needs, we needed to build a content capability as well as a digital capability that was sort of a surround or an envelope into this practice.
Right.
But the key here was to find people who had their heart in social impact, who were keen to be of service to society. Because for them, it's not a job. they are so passionate, so excited about the opportunity to have an impact on real issues that are confronting our world. That's the secret sauce, I would say. Find the people who are passionate about a topic, and in this case, so making lives better or social impact. And there are many of them in the Gen Z millennial gang.
Lovely. In fact, when you spoke about digital, I know for a fact that close to 1,000 people, if I'm not mistaken, have actually been put through an 8 or a 9-month major digital marketing program at Adfactors, which is really extensive and needs a lot of inputs, a lot of campaigns, a lot of ideas, a lot of research and everything else. So truly very well invested in. And Adfactors today, I know, has a massive digital capability, which is like now internalized very, very deeply. And a lot of real senior people also have joined the company, journalists across. And I think you have a massive bench strength, Nikhil, because you anyways are somebody who's so truly evolved, but you can shout out to any number of really good, powerful minds and strategic minds. So that's great. That's great.
Thank you, Pavan.
So Nikhil, I think one more way that this practice can do good actually is build the category in the space and the need for a driving purpose for every company, and not just saying it to clamber aboard a brand wagon of opportunity, which is tactical, Father's Day, this day, Earth Day, Mother's Day, but something which is genuine, which is done with intent. So how are you trying to, create awareness and acceptance of and for the category?
I couldn't agree with you more, Pavan. If one's intent is right and you keep at something, eventually I believe you will always succeed. And therefore, some of the initiatives that we have taken, I can give you as an example. About 2 months ago, we had tied up with CII to host a series of workshops, capacity building workshops for the medium to small NGOs who would typically never be able to afford to hire the services of a firm like us, right?
Right.
And we had built this into 3 different workshop areas after doing some deep research, understanding what the ecosystem need was.
Right.
So the first and no-brainer here was on raising funds, right? So 3 R's emerged, right? How to raise money was one. The second R was on regulation, because there is an increasingly complex regulatory environment for NGOs to navigate.
Right.
And they don't often have the resources and wherewithal to do that. And the third, of course, is reputation.
Right.
So raising money, regulation and reputation, how to build their reputation to attract more money as well as to do more impactful work. We curated in partnership with CII these workshops, and we have made them open to that entire database of the CII NGO fraternity. So that was an example of where we learned in the curation of it. We learned about real needs, but we also served with no other agenda than that, right? To try and make this category more robust.
Right.
But another very simple way is we also have a very powerful analytics and digital team at Adfactors. So we went to that team and said, can you help us put together a social impact storytelling report, right? So they used all the tools that they have and then gave us data around simple stuff, right? Which are the publications that are most interested on this topic? Who are the 10 most prolific authors, etc., etc. But again, we took that and we shared it with everybody.
Wow.
Right? We put that out into the ecosystem, saying that here's what we have learned. So we are learning, and as we are learning, we are sharing it. And I think if we keep doing that, that is the spirit of social impact, right? That it is not to say I learned something and I'm going to hold on to it.
Truly, truly. And it just sort of actually is a bit of an underwriting or maybe a confirmation of what you just said, that most of the people in the practice are people who are passionate about giving, about doing, about, helping bring about positive social impact and societal change. So, beautiful. And now, Nikhil, let's widen the narrative to a topic that many are finding difficult in a hybrid work environment that is facing strong headwinds. And these are actually, I'm quoting your words from our discussion prior to the podcast. You discussed this difficult topic with me before we started recording, but I'll let you reveal the topic and the thought
Absolutely, Pavan. Thank you for bringing that back onto my radar. It's really about building teams in troubled times, right? And the key to that is to create a culture that unlocks creativity.
Right.
So, Pavan, when I say that, basically it's about creating a culture where the team can do their best work. So, employee well-being, employee engagement, learning and development, these are some of the areas that together create an environment that allows high-performing teams to deliver excellent work.
Right, absolutely. And we'll go into a deeper dive into that. But first, Nikhil, let me connect it with something that you do with a lot of passion and with a lot of wonderful delivery I know of and I've heard of. You also work as a coach, a duly certified, professionally trained, capable, respected coach. What areas do you provide coaching in? I want you to tell us. And how does what you do as a coach intersect with the communications world? Because God knows every corporate leader needs a great deal of coaching. But tell us about your specialized areas of coaching for corporate leaders and others.
Thanks, Pavan. In fact, it is because as a corporate leader, for the past maybe 15 years, I have had the blessing of being able to work with a coach that I decided about 4 years ago that I would jump into this and be one myself. So I've recently, just a month ago, got my ACC certification.
Congratulations.
So I've been a qualified coach for a while, but I've just got what's called an accreditation, which is ACC. So very proud of that.
Wow.
But the areas really are life and leadership.
Okay.
And the reason I choose to work with both is I believe that this whole work-life thing, there are no boundaries. The Nikhil who comes home or walks out from what is now my bedroom workplace into my living room workplace, it's the same Nikhil, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, the work I do with my clients intersects in both spaces.
Lovely.
Most of them come to me for a career or a leadership related area of work. But as trust builds, and that is the nature of our overall reputation business, right? As the trust builds, then you open up more.
Right.
And that's where the life part comes in. So intersection of life and leadership coaching.
Lovely. So let's bring it all together. Okay, there are multiple areas that are prime focus slots, as it were, in life and especially in workplaces. Let's take them one by one. Let's speak about the kind of work culture that you help create and champion across your teams at Adfactors PR.
So this is an area that overall, I believe Adfactors has created a wonderful space. And I use the word safe space, right? Often. In fact, there's an acronym called CISA, Safe and Inclusive Self-Affirming Spaces, which I think really is at the core of building a great culture. If you can create a place where every person in a team feels safe to be themselves, feels encouraged to be themselves, I think you are really, and that's what Adfactors does. It finds the best in every person and it focuses on that. It says, Acha, okay, if this is what you're good at, go do this, do more of this. It doesn't try and put the proverbial round peg into a square.
And in fact, it is helping people by empowering them to first go ahead on their strengths, build greater confidence through deliveries, and then become even more conscious and curious about exploring other areas to learn. You also spoke about client centricity, collaboration, and innovation.
Pavan, just one more piece on that safe space, because I think this is really unique about Adfactors, and therefore by extension the work that I'm trying to do more of is to remove fear. So the fearless PR professional is what we are trying to create. And there are two levels of fear, right? There is fear for life and livelihood, which we have gone through this pandemic. And therefore to create a safe work environment with all due precautions and to protect livelihoods is really a huge way to remove fear from people. We have all had friends, families, sometimes ourselves, been through this very tough phase where livelihood has been threatened, where earning capacity has been reduced, if not removed. And that makes people impotent. That makes people helpless. That makes people angry.
Right.
And helpless, hopeless, angry people don't do great creative work. Right? So if at the very base level you have secured the employment of your team, which is what Adfactors did right at the beginning of the pandemic when we said there would be no job loss, when we went to campuses and honored the commitments that we had made, where we hired 150 people off campus year after year, these are signals that, look, your job is secure. Now I can go and ask the team saying, please do your best work for the client. This is where the client centricity comes in.
Absolutely.
How can you ask somebody to be client centric if they are worried whether they have gainful employment the week after or the month after?
Absolutely.
So remove the fear and then demand excellence in client centricity. So Pavan, but that I think is just the foundational work of removing fear. The real hard work, and that's where I'm focusing a lot of my energy right now, is to create an environment of psychological safety.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So psychological safety is, okay, so there are two ways to look at it. Very simplistically put, before I get to the definition, there's this beautiful book I read by a gentleman called Timothy Clark. And he says there are 4 stages to building a psychologically safe team or environment. The first is inclusion safety.
Okay.
Does every member of my team feel that they are included, that they are part of the tribe, that they belong, right? So that sense of belonging, and we've got your back, you are part of us, and once you're in this family, you're in a safe space. So that's inclusion safety. That's the first step.
Yeah.
After that team member feels included, all of us want to improve. And therefore there's learner safety. We always are looking for, I want to learn something new. So are we creating a learning environment? And we've talked earlier when you asked me the question about the digitization of Adfactors and the huge amounts of effort we're putting into upskilling, but that's about creating learner safety. Learner safety is the second aspect that's talked about. And that's again something that we are creating a culture of continuous learning. At Adfactors, we have for every level democratized learning. So I have recently completed this upgrade course that we talked about, 8-9 month long course, but so have 800-900 other colleagues. So create opportunities for learning. That's learner safety, and everybody has access to it.
I think a few years ago, Adfactors PR gave out a physical Kindle device to every account executive across the organization, encouraging them to read books of their choice. And, really, I mean, that really is internalizing it, making it intrinsic to the DNA of everybody. Go, learn, and, come back and do the best you can.
Absolutely. Each employee is given a budget to buy books. So there's lots of stuff being done to promote a learning culture. So the 4 phases that I talked about, inclusion safety and learner safety, and I've given you examples of what we are doing to create this.
Yeah.
Then comes contribution safety. Okay. Contribution safety means when every team member feels that their voice counts, that they can speak, that their thoughts are useful. And if you look at the way we conduct our meetings, even if it's a Zoom meeting, every employee's point of view is solicited, listened to, appreciated, not always agreed with, but everybody is listened to.
Right.
So with that listening that we have created, the inclusion and now the ability to contribute, you've got 3 levels of psychological safety that are being created.
Right.
The 4th is probably the toughest, and that's called challenger safety. Can you go and tell the boss, you're wrong. Boss, I don't think that's a good idea. And that is the journey we are on, right? So to be able to create a space where every team member feels confident that they have a tribe, that they are learning, that they are contributing, and if they disagree by some chance, their disagreement will be given a chance to breathe. Now, this is a psychologically safe workplace, or 4 things you can do to create it. So, Pavan, one of the other ways to look at psychological safety, again, if you're interested in the subject, you must read or listen to the work of Amy Edmondson. She defines psychological safety as a shared belief that the environment is supportive.
Lovely.
So I'm repeating that. A shared belief that the environment is supportive.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people who often say, yeah, we don't have time for all this nice stuff, this woo-woo, this is all, we have targets and we have numbers and this doesn't work in the real world. And here's where I beg to differ, because psychological safety is not about just being nice. It includes having some really tough, hard conversations, but done in a safe space. So you're still calling out an underperformer. You're still demanding excellence. So it is not the opposite of
being lackadaisical.
So it doesn't excuse underperformance.
Right.
Psychological safety just creates the ability to have that conversation, have it fast and improve. So being nice, being soft, allowing to slack off, not a part of psychologically safe workspaces.
Okay, let's talk about, you've had an amazing career, so many years, Nikhil, and so much of excellent work. What has been your biggest learning over the last few years when it comes to leading a team?
I think in the last few years, what's really shifted for me hugely is the notion of being in service of the team. Right? I always used to think that to lead a team, I had to be the smartest person in the room. I had to be in command. I had to know what I was doing, everything that I was doing, and be this fearless leader. But I think my redefinition of what fearless is accepting the fact that I don't know everything.
Yes.
Being willing to listen to every person, taking points of view and then taking a decision.
Right.
And just being in service of. So that's been the biggest, I think, last 2 or 3 years revelation for me.
Right.
And it could be if I'm in service of this podcast right now, right? And if this is what I'm doing, I will enjoy this. I will do it to the best of my ability. And that's it. And the next task may be something else, and the next task may be something else. It doesn't matter. What I have chosen to offer myself to, once I'm in it, you get all of me. So that's what I think I've learned.
Lovely. And that really also shines forth as an example and a suggestion to everybody else who's in the team. Because, the example that you set actually inspires people to think like that and perhaps even emulate it. And it's a great example to set. So, yeah, lovely, well said. And indeed, you have really given your all to this episode. And I'm grateful for your service. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Pavan.
There's been a lot of talk of, about mental health that got triggered as a result of the pandemic. And what is the impact on the PR industry in this regard? And again, it might sound like a naive question, but I also think that your psychological safety aspects have answered much of it. But still, tell me.
No, there's much more to be done, Pavan. I believe that the good news is that because of the pandemic, mental health has got a lot of airtime, right? It was a topic that nobody talked about. Now everybody is talking about it.
Right.
But I think there's just so much talk and so little real meaningful action. So back to my say-do gap, right? In a different context, there's a lot of saying, not enough of doing. And let me elaborate by what I mean by not enough of doing. One of the first things I did when I joined was, like every other best-in-class company, we too at Adfactors have put together a whole lot of things that employees can tap into, and one of them is the ability to reach a counselor, a therapist, if you feel the need.
Okay.
And then we've tied up with a professional firm, we've sent it out to all employees. So if I were to leave it at the saying part, as a leader, I can say when asked, I have done this. The doing part is, I tested the system. I called up. I solicited that service. I had a therapy session for myself to understand, is the quality good? How do I enroll? How difficult is it to enroll? Have all my team members enrolled? And that's what a leader has to do. You can't say that, okay, my team is taking care of it. This is so important. You have to take care of it. You have to be at the forefront of driving that change. And by virtue of demonstrating that, the stigma associated with it can reduce.
Absolutely.
Right? It gives license to your team to say that if Nikhil is doing it, maybe I can do it too.
Sure.
So that's a simple example of what I mean by doing is required, not just saying that, yes, we've got it in place.
Absolutely. Very, very interesting and extremely insightful, actually. I mean, I know that I've heard of Madan standing in queue in a bank in those earlier days when you had to stand in queue to deposit a check or take money out, and that's from a client bank, to see how the service was and how people were being sort of, served. So, and that goes back as feedback and as, what can be suggested. So, yeah.
So, Pavan, a linked point, but a much larger point. So, this is what, as an individual, like as an example, I did. But as a company, Adfactors, when we were discussing what we need to do to help people in regard to mental wellness, the topic came down to saying, it's very easy to say all of this, but we have clients, we've talked to client centricity, there are demands, people are falling sick, but the demand of service isn't going down. So how do I be this leader who is creating a psychologically safe workspace, who's doing all this stuff, when I also have to deliver on promises made, right, when a contract was signed? And the answer came in what we are now calling creating a resource surplus Adfactors.
Lovely.
What does that mean? We are saying that we recognize the pandemic has put new pressures on people. There are going to be X number of people who are unwell at a given time. Hiring is taking longer. So the old way of hiring used to be when a new client came in the door, then we started ramping up the team. What we've been doing consistently for the last 6 months is that we are hiring ahead of the curve. We are hiring an average of 60 people a month before we need them. Wow. So when the business comes in, we have the team that's ready to serve it. Now, this to me is probably one of the biggest enablers of creating a mentally well workforce.
Right.
Because it allows me the luxury when, if Pavan or a team member comes and says, Nikhil, I'm really just not feeling up to it today. With a smile, I can say, Pavan, I hear you. Take a few days off. You need to. It can't be that, okay, Pavan, you should rest, but before you go, please make sure you send these 5 things to me, right? That doesn't work.
Yeah.
But I have created the capacity to say, Pavan, you can take a few days off, and I have a team that can support the work. So creating that resource surplus environment is a huge concrete step in what I said, action versus the doing versus the saying on building a mentally well workforce.
Right. So keep all the bases covered in terms of employability, employee availability, resource availability, and proactively. And this is not just a checking of the boxes to say, okay, we've done what we had to do, but never compromising on but exceeding on delivery. So, yeah.
So, Pavan, client centricity is about being available to clients 24/7, 365 days of work.
Absolutely.
In this world of always on media, in the business of PR, you have to be that sort of agile and flexible. But that doesn't mean that I have to have teams that are always individually on all the time.
True.
So if you create enough capacity, organize well, clients get access to Adfactors through that time, but team members get the chance to have their downtime as well.
Absolutely. And in fact, one of my questions was that, to a world battered and bruised by COVID, now expecting employees to deliver hard, tangible results. Fine. I mean, too much focus on the softer aspects of business takes away from delivering results. But when you prepare and empower a team and give it so much of amazing support, so whether it's from going out to make a presentation or to listen to a client for the first time, a potential client, or to give deliveries, or to interact with different stakeholders in the value chain, whether it's media people, whether it's across digital, traditional, whatever, or clients, or, associates and everybody else, I think everybody actually gets the value and the delivery that they need more than they ask for or think that they need. So there is that consultative thing which becomes far stronger and far more client-centric than it ever used to be. It's not just, the client wants this. Yes, but what does the client need? Let's try and get both together nicely. And that, I think, is what is the biggest focus delivery value that the entire system that you've explained to me is capable of and is actually, I dare say, delivering into the marketplace. So amazing. Anything else you want to tell me, Nikhil, that I haven't asked you about?
Maybe one piece that I believe is really important is, I call it finding fantastic rather than finding fault.
Fabulous.
We are so hardwired to find fault. Like you can pick up where a comma is missing or a full stop is there, or when the audio quality drops. And I understand excellence comes from delivering quality work.
Sure.
So while there has to be an effort to do that, there has to be an equal effort to find that moment when a person does something superbly well, however small that is, and go and give them a pat on the back, or go give them a hug, or give them a emoji if it's online, saying, "Thank you, I appreciate the effort you took to do this. It really made my day easier." That finding fantastic moment
Amazing.
is what enables people to be their best selves, Pavan. And that's the intersection of coaching and communication and team building. Because if you can find the alignment between what I call the human being and the human doing, each one of us are here to do something and deliver something special to the world. If you can find what that is and do that every day, there is no stress, there is no fear, there is no mountain too high to climb. It's just a joyous day out in nature, exploring the world, because you're just being you, and you do it so beautifully.
Amazing.
So that's the space to operate from.
And in a wonderfully psychologically safe, emotionally inclusive and empowering workplace, but also similarly the state of mind. So yeah, beautiful. Very, very well said, Nikhil. I think I've got a lot of insights from what you said, finding fantastic and so many other beautiful thoughts. I think not just me, I dare say everybody from the youngest starter in the professional B2B space, whatever the sector or work area that they are in, to the most senior-most, industry and knowledge captains. I think everybody will take away a great deal of insights. And I think the biggest one is that there is indeed a major specialized and a very focused need for being very conscious about social impact, about ESG. And I think your new practice will help a lot of people take that to fruition and actually help them also reduce the say-do gap. And the say-do gap is another wonderful iteration or expression that can apply any and everywhere, right? So thank you very much, Nikhil. I found this conversation extremely insightful, very, very helpful. What did you think of our chat so far?
So, Pavan, the learning has been also by observing the wonderful work that you have been doing on Mediabrief, on building this PP podcast, on bringing together some really powerful, interesting guests and stitching them together in unique ways, which makes one want to listen in or to read. So an inspiring piece of work. So you found your voice, you found your space clearly.
Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you very much indeed. You've been really kind. Thank you very much.
Absolutely a pleasure, Pavan. I've had fun. I've enjoyed myself. Thank you so much.
Nikhil Dey, communicator and coach, executive director at Adfactors PR and founder Soul to Soul Coaching, was my distinguished guest on this very insightful episode of MVP, the Master's Voice podcast on Mediabrief.com. We've won several awards, and it's, I dare say, because of the quality of the content and the expression and the presence and personalities and profiles of the guests like Nikhil Dey, who've appeared on this episode in the past. Till we meet again in the next episode of MVP, the Master's Voice podcast on Mediabrief.com, this is your host and friend Pavan Chawla saying, take care, stay safe, do good. Bye-bye.
Sitting squarely in the groove.